As in, we by design work very hard to ensure that our events are inclusive and diversely represented. In the end, I was getting paid $3,000 a month. That was it.
3,000 Rand.
3,000 Rand a month. That was my
What?
stipend for 19 months out of varsity.
There was that one time in the garden before Jesus was about to be handed over to be trialed and crucified. And this is the savior of the world. And in that one moment, he prayed and he said, Lord, please let this cup pass. Please. Matthew, I don't know if you know this, but for me personally, you are one of the most inspiring figures in South African entrepreneurship.
I'm laughing at you. That is the best way to open a podcast with a guest. Is completely flatter them when they don't deserve it.
With truth. I mean, as someone who's trying to build a community in tech, and I've been part of the Startup Club when it was still Joburg Startup Club. And now to see it grow into Startup Club South Africa and to have frequent events and you're always getting really great turnouts, I know that's not easy. And kudos to you. Well done for what you've done.
Thank you, man.
Could you please just tell us why you started the Startup Club and what's the vision behind it?
Well, a lot of that will be the fruits of a much longer journey. Of course, I don't look it. Well, I'm told I don't look it. I might feel like it today, but I'm 34 this year, so there's a good decade plus.
I wouldn't say you're a day past 27.
I'll take cheapest. What a podcast this is going to be. No, guys. So yeah, I mean, I guess more than anything, I have a sense of mission and purpose around enabling entrepreneurs. I want to play a role in my life of solving super hard, big world problems, real world problems. And you can either try to do that personally, or you can become catalytic force, if you would, to help great people do that. I think entrepreneurs are best positioned. A lot of the world's solutions to big problems need to be commercially viable. So business is a great mechanism to do these things. And to be honest, I just have such a love for founders. For their propensity for risk, for their ingenuity, their ability to solve problems, attract and cast vision. So heck, I'm just playing a small role in trying to roll them down the hill.
Yeah. There is that saying that if you want to achieve your own goals, you must help someone else achieve their own goals.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So Startup Club has been the outworking, I guess, of that personal sense of purpose. And we can get into what we do and why we do it and how we've got to this place, if you like.
All right. So let's hear the whole story. So you started off your educational career at Wits.
Yep.
How did Wits prepare you to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I don't think any university preps someone to be an entrepreneur, even if they learn business. I ask all of the folks I interview, do you think founders are born or are they made? And almost every person says with a resounding yes that they really are the culmination of their life's experiences. I was born a pastor's kid. My mom was on a church staff. My dad was an entrepreneur. It meant that, and I was the type of student that was not your consummate hustler in school. I think I was purposeless, to be honest. And I mean that not in the, woe is me sense. I mean that I think you're just going about your day. Yeah. You're trying to enjoy yourself, make friends, find out what all this is about. But my faith has always been super fundamental to why I do what I do and what I end up doing. But I've always had this inclination for building things, creating things, but didn't know what that meant. I went to university wanting to become a marketer, thinking I'd be coming up with cool campaigns. Yeah. Because that's what you think these things, if you're a lawyer, I'm closing deals, you don't realize it's so much more, of course. I thought I was going to be a marketer. My dad has been in the marketing space for decades and started doing a BCom. Found a love and a knack for finance. I wasn't a particularly good academic until I got into matric and then university. And I say this with all humility, but I finished top of my class in undergrad, I finished top of my class in postgrad in the School of Business and Faculty Law Commerce Management. And so I had a few options, to be honest. Wanted to go into management consulting. What I knew about consulting as a 21-year-old kid leaving Wits was zero, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But they were going to pay for an MBA, and I wanted to do my MBA in the States. I wanted to go to New York Stern, and that was as far as I saw ahead in my life. I didn't know what I wanted to build or what I wanted to do. Wits is university, rather. I can't speak necessarily to Wits. The beauty about the university experience is accountability. It is the first time in your life that you will be the sum of the effort you put in, the sum of your focus, the sum of your routine. And that's why, even if folks are anti-university these days because they just want to get straight into the workspace, it is a great opportunity to help you frame what you're good at, what you're not, interests, dealing with people, but mostly just how to manage autonomy. First time I had a car, first time I managed my diary, first time I was responsible for budget and my first couple of jobs. You can't pay for that opportunity, right? And that's quite cool. So I wouldn't say Wits framed much of what I've done today. Yes, you learn some theory, but that's out the window the moment you do well in a test or whatever. It's more about the season that helps frame you. So I was very grateful. I thoroughly enjoyed my time, made great friends. It did help me refine what I might want to do, but I found a knack for finance. And I was going to go into management consulting. Ended up not doing that because you begin to realize, and there's a very famous Steve Jobs interview where he talks about management consultants. It's a very aspirational job, of course, Bain, McKinsey, BCG, great companies.
Yeah.
You get paid loads of money, super young, travel a lot. It's great in that sense. But his criticism, and I think I share this criticism of consultants, please forgive me if you're a consultant listening to the episode today, is you typically advise work that you do not see through. And it's very easy for me to say, oh, do this all about your business without being involved in the business and actually seeing if the consequences of what I've told you to do actually do you right or do you wrong.
Yeah.
And that disconnect was uncomfortable for me. I was very fortunate. I was introduced to a guy in the financial services sector. And most people will think about financial advisors as your discovery or momentum salesman, selling you a life policy, for example. There is the subsect of high net worth, ultra high net worth financial services where you become an advisor to some particularly prominent wealthy people, families. There's different sectors. We focused on the offshore space. And it was a world that I'd never seen, but the people you got to meet, the things you had to learn, the money on the table that you could make was just exorbitant. I think when I joined, I was 21. The top consultant in our office made $1 million in that year.
Wow.
In a South African-based office advising high net worth clients. Now, I was not there for the money, but I couldn't get my mind past how did this all work? What was the system? How were you meeting these families? How were you meeting these people? I had to work as a biz dev guy, trying to put senior consultants in front of potential clients. Super hard, man. I turned down a couple of super high-paying jobs out of varsity, and I was getting paid $3,000 a month. That was it.
3,000 rand.
3,000 rand a month. That was my stipend for 19 months out of varsity.
Do you regret that? Do you regret taking a low-paying job at that stage?
Not at all, because it turned massively. But in the moment, I regret it every second. And sometimes there's some good fruit there, and a lesson for maybe some listeners today that there is some fruit in just sticking it out. And you have a lot more control, a lot more options than necessarily I need to jump ship entirely. I was fortunate in that I basically posed some of the guys I was working for weren't great at closing deals. And my com, it was $3,000 plus com.
Okay.
My com was dependent on their ability to close deals.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't great. So I was stuck making $3,000 in com, $3,000 as a stipend every month.
And they wouldn't allow you to go and try and convert those sales on your own?
And so that's what they did. They actually ended up promoting me to start running my own consulting book. And I think within a year, I'd made some serious money.
Wow.
And I was very grateful for that. People think I say serious money as in like 100 grand. I'm talking like R1 million in the bank when you're 23.
At 23?
It's a weird position to be in. Now, I don't say that boastfully at all, because if off the podcast we have a conversation about what I've done with that money, you'll begin to really realize I'm probably poorer now than I've ever been, and ended up giving a lot of that away for some other reasons. Philanthropic, charitable, or otherwise.
So, wait, please. You had R1 million at 23, million rand plus.
Yes.
And
true.
Before that, you were earning 3,000 rand a month.
Yeah, it literally went from like 50 grand in the bank to R1 million in the bank.
How did your life change the moment that 1 million rand hit the bank?
Not at all. Not at all. I didn't know what to do with it. The only thing I did was I bought a car. And I didn't buy the car cash. I financed the car. So you can't be in the financial advisory space and then not take your own advice, right?
Yeah.
So I literally, and still then, it was a conservative car. It was a 2-liter Scirocco.
Yeah.
Fun, but I lived at home. I lived at home. I lived at home until I got married.
Wow.
And was very, very comfortable with that. To rather build my net worth, my aptitude, my network, than spend money prematurely.
If you could go back to 23 years old Matthew, would you advise him to do things differently?
I would have invested in people earlier. That put me in a position where between 23 and say 28, I was able to do some things that most 20-year-olds were not able to do. Travel, start some companies, invest in some businesses. I invested in a coffee business and a couple of properties. I started investing offshore when I was in my 20s. Most people wait till they're 50 to think about that. So weird position to be in. But I wouldn't change much of that, right? And again, hindsight's perfect, but I don't think any of us have the right to resource like that with almost no expenses that young. And so I felt a massive weight of responsibility to steward that well.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. So you worked. You didn't just come out of university and dive straight into being a founder.
Yep.
You worked with a lot of high net worth individuals, and I'm sure you were studying, you were reading during working, and you were exposed to these high net worth individuals quite a lot.
Sure.
What are some of the common characteristics that these ultra rich people have that separate them from the average people?
Oh, it's a good question. I think you will begin to realize that people actually have less in common than you think, even though they've got wealth in common. One of the things that amazed me is that it doesn't matter whether you are in fact, some of the most difficult clients to deal with or even close deals on were those people that were not that wealthy. The people that were wealthy, you begin to realize that most businesses are fundamentally just about trust. That's all that it is. And that was probably the biggest learning for me, is even though I was a 20-something-year-old kid who I think was relatively smart, but when it came to actual work experience and credibility and stuff I'd done, who was I? I didn't deserve much of this. At the same time, I remember being so incredibly thorough about treating these clients as if it was the last client on earth, and going to just ridiculous lengths at personal expense to show them that they could trust me and that I was worth spending time with and I was going to serve them best. I think that's what so many people in their 20s and 30s forget is, you're in the season where actually if you just had a servant mentality and your customers are people you should be serving that early, these become the lifetime value of those relationships is just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. I just think I outserved most advisors in the market. And that is quite literally whether it means you've got to drive 5 hours to go and meet them for a 15-minute coffee and drive 5 hours home. You do that. If you've got to spend weeks getting a question answered and you've got to pay 20 grand legal advice from some of the top firms in the country for an hour of their time to do it at your expense, even if the deal won't close, you do it. You just go to different lengths. With that said, what do some wealthy people have in common? They are innately good with people. They are innately decisive. They don't sit on the fence. Even if the answer is wrong, they say no. And I mean, most of the people I have met, although my perspective has changed, because again, these folks were typically more career people, whereas the people I interview now are founders, far more risk centric, maybe more visionary in terms of what they're building. I think with all of this to say that if it's just about making money, you can actually do that in quite a boring fashion. Like you don't actually have to start a business if it's just about making money. I don't believe it is, and I don't believe it should be.
Yeah.
But there are way easier ways to get wealthy than start a business.
Say
it's so hard.
Okay, say you're 25 years old right
Yes.
now, you're listening to this podcast and you just want to make money. Maybe you've got a baby on the way.
Yes.
Or maybe there's a big obligation to make money. What would be the fastest way to make money that's not starting a business right now?
Crikey, man. What a tough question, because if I had that golden bullet, I'd probably be doing it. It's never been easier to make money than it has been today. Never. But what I think people really lack in their 20s and 30s is they don't understand how to appraise value.
Appraise value.
Appraise value.
Okay.
As in, if someone is paying me to do a job, how do I go in return? I mean, that's all that a business transaction is, right? I'm willing to put a monetary amount, a value to what you're going to transact with me, what you're giving me in exchange. And if you just, every sale, every service, that's all that is. If I can add more value than anyone else, I can charge more than anyone else. But people don't, they do the bare minimum. It's why people who are employed struggle to break that psyche. It's because they go, well, I'm only being employed to do X, so I do X. There's never a perception of going, how do I completely blow the socks out of those expectations in order to justify being paid more? What would I do today if I absolutely had to? I mean, I definitely wouldn't get into anything, forex trading, Web3, crypto, any of that nonsense. Park that for a second. Sorry, listeners. Please don't do that. There is no get rich quick scheme.
True.
There is nothing. There is timing, and if you're lucky, you're lucky. I don't know. Let's park that. Larreth, maybe something more definitive comes to mind. But there is so much you can do virtually that allows you to scale what you do without even being good at it anymore. AI has introduced some amazing things around content creation. I look at my own business and I say, man, if I could trust someone with half the tasks that I manage personally, and that's everything from running our marketing channels to, gosh, I would. But but you know how many times I get pitched a week? Hey, we'd love to do your marketing for you. But not one person comes to me and says, hey, Matt, here's a case study of a campaign just for you guys. Take it, don't take it. Like, man, such bare minimum effort to win business these days. So that's what I would encourage young people about, is just break the norm. It reminds me of this story. A friend of mine co-founded Pineapple Insurance. And the insurance sector is probably one of the hardest sectors to break into marketing-wise. In fact, I interviewed him in this room. And to get Pineapple out there, to build their brand, they took, I can't remember what the number was, 10,000 pineapples. They bought 10,000 pineapples at Joburg Food Market and handed them out on the corners of the streets the day that they launched their app.
Wow.
Now, that is the most bizarre spend of money you've ever heard, right? But best believe people are going, wow. And this is a weird way to answer your question, by the way, but it's just something I get asked a heck of a lot is, hey, I can do this for you, pay me money for it. And then you go, well, got to stand out. In this world where it's never been easier to offer services, how do you stand out from the rest? Long answer to your short question, man.
Yeah, very detailed, very, very, very rich. I completely relate with a lot of things that you're saying. When I started my businesses and all these things, I thought I was going to get rich immediately. I would see people go and get jobs, and I was like, if you can go and make 10,000 Rand a month at a job, and I can build websites for people, and I make one website a month for 50,000 Rand, I'm going to make a lot more money than you. Then the reality sets in when you start a business that A, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
B, it takes a lot longer than you think it's going to take.
It does.
And then C, you actually have to deliver a really, really, really good service. So there is no rich quick scheme, especially
I think
in business.
the only thing I will say, and that's good wisdom, man, and learned wisdom. I can hear it. You've journeyed that. Folks need to always be comfortable with this idea of opportunity cost, right? I forego something now in order to benefit later, or if I give something out, if I pick something now, it means I haven't picked something else, right? We cannot have everything. And so for me, it's very simple. Your 20s and 30s are your opportunity cost years. If you intend on being like, people don't know what they're asking for. If I give you money today, you don't know what you're asking for. There is a reason that most lottery winners die broke. People are not conditioned to have everything that they think they want immediately. There is a lot of merit in processing all of these things over time. And I think that's what your 20s and 30s are to do. It's to try something, it's to create a business, it's to try a bit of career. It's not one or the other. It's to actually be okay. I'm going to take a bit of a longer view here. So I'm willing to trade this off for now, and it will come back.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about all this is we feel like we have to learn these lessons for ourselves. No, it's different for me. And yet you look at every wealthy person in the world, and Jeff Bezos starts Amazon in his 40s or early 50s. Look at Elon Musk. You look at these things; these things don't happen, right? Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So your first taste of entrepreneurship was with GetLion.
So that the financial services business I ended up running was effectively my first venture. You had to hire your own team, run your own functions. So I effectively just leveraged licenses from big asset management businesses and investment funds, and worked under a brokerage mandate. So I ran a business within a business. That's always a good starter point, if you would. I mentioned to you, I had a few ventures in the coffee space and did a little bit of things on the side as well. My first, I was joking with you guys offline earlier, but one of the most unbelievable things that I ever did was get married.
Yeah. Tell us why. Why is getting married one of the best things?
Oh, goodness. Well, firstly, I would say getting married to the right person, of course. The contract doesn't mean much if it's not the right person and on the right value base. But what happens is this life is incredibly tough. Entrepreneurship is very tough. Life's tough in general, but entrepreneurship is tough. You need an accountability partner that picks you up when you're low, vice versa. Someone that sees your potential value even today and is able to go, wow, okay, cool, I see that. I'm in, I've bought in, we're going to do this together. To become one, so to speak. And so power. It's a powerful bond, and that becomes almost like a superpower, if you would. I think if you are both on board to building a venture, that's why I'm such a proponent of marriage. But I think I was already uncomfortable because I had made a lot of money in my 20s. I knew there was something more. I was excited about building something. I felt a bit purposeless in the space I was in, and wanted to. I had this epiphany on a trip to the US with my brother, and I was just like, actually, I really want to do something big. I want to help people solve big world problems. We're talking the stuff that just systemically are wrong. People don't stay. For such a resourced, modernized world, there's way too much poverty, there's way too much, education should not be the problem that it is right now, or lack thereof. Jobs should not be. So we're talking big world problems, and I wanted to apply myself to that. Not to your point earlier, do I do that myself or do I enable other people? I'm not sure. I thought, cool, let me enable other people. I got back from honeymoon and I resigned. I sold off my client book in the wealth management business, had a bit of runway, and spent 9 months going from coffee shop to coffee shop every day, just looking at what I was going to do next. I had no idea, but I read almost every business book you could. I hadn't built a business from the ground up. This was my own business and team, but It wasn't like literally idea to scale, 0 to 1 and 1 to 100. So I read almost everything that you can imagine. Lean Startup and Personal MBA and the E-Myth and every book you can think about.
Yeah.
And resolved I wanted to build an accelerator, which for the listeners that do not know what that is, an incubation program is typically a corporate or an organization that designs a business building program to help you start your business. And that will help you cover everything from let's make sure your idea is right to what does the business system look like and business model. Acceleration takes those folks that have already started and goes, cool, let's go from 1 to 100 now. How do we grow this thing? And I wanted to help enable entrepreneurs that way. I met a gentleman over dinner when I was almost ready to launch this thing. And the conversation was quite simple. Hey, if we turned this program into an app, his business was serving a few thousand small businesses at the time. He was in the lending space, still is in the lending space. And if we can turn this into an app, then would you come in and be CEO? We'll fund it. You build it. You take some shares. Everyone gets a split, and we go. And so I became a tech founder overnight. It was my first time moving into tech. I had never built a tech product, never written a line of code. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I thought I could change the world. And that became a business called GetLion, which in its first iteration, we raised some money to build out a product that was going to be like a Discovery Vitality for entrepreneurs. It was literally an app that said, hey, if your business got compliant and it submitted its taxes on time and you had all the right structures in place and you were SIPC registered, then we would move you up these tiers from bronze to silver to gold.
Okay.
And we would give you discounts on a Yoko machine, and we'd give you all these perks. And it was like Vitality, a reward system, but for founders, for entrepreneurs. Not tech specific, but generally speaking. And turns out we reached several thousand users. COVID had hit. People were very hungry for this type of knowledge. But we were running out of money. No one was paying for this product, which is a great, it's given me such empathy for tech founders that we're trying to support now.
Yeah.
Amazing product, probably did way too much, way too soon. There was definitely some complexity in the shareholder team as well. We disagreed maybe on some directions about the business, and I was the one building this day to day, which is quite tough. Fortunate to raise some more money. To change the company, pivoted. It became an e-commerce solution where we helped folks literally have their own e-commerce store and take payments. And again, this was 3-4 years ago. At the time, it was less common, and we thought we were onto just a product that was changing the world. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then our funder got acquired and could no longer advance on its funding line. And when we thought we had 2 years of runway, it went down to almost 3 months.
Ouch.
And I learned the very, very tough lesson of having way too much identity in a business and taking this all very personally and just having been way overexposed. And, this was probably 3.5 years after I'd left the wealth business. So, you have some cash in the bank, but not 10 years worth of cash in the bank. You're still newly married. My wife is an entrepreneur. It was an interesting season, but I'm exceptionally grateful for it. It's giving me a different empathy for founders and folks trying to build things.
Wow. Okay, that could not have been easy. Just the abrupt end to the whole business. And I think failure teaches us a lot of things. There's a lot of value in failing. I have this little joke that I make that I've probably bought more than 50 domains and tried to do something and then just bin it. Yeah. For example, there's this membership app that we wanted to do.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I was hitting the team. Everyone, we need to launch a membership app. Membership. Then, of course, things always take longer than you think. And we binned it within 2 weeks. And the whole team started thinking, man, this guy is crazy. Why is he the CEO of this company?
Yes.
You learn a lot in failure. And failure, the failures, I think they compound into the big success.
Yeah, listen, no muscle grows without tension, right? And so I think people want the wisdom, the intuition on the other side of failure without being willing to fail.
Yeah.
So I'm really just an amazing case of the things that have happened in my life have been very little to do with what I think I have deserved, or to be frank, my capacity. Yeah, it's. I'm grateful for that season. Super difficult. I needed a couple of months just to try and get my head right and recalibrate to just try again. But it has taught me a lot more. They say two things in the tech space: that failure teaches you way more than success does, and that money or capital can ruin a business as quickly as it can grow it.
Why is that? That's that second point. Why can money and success ruin a business? How does it do that?
People don't know what to do with it, right? People don't know what to do with it. So it's probably my same error is I was left to almost I had complete carte blanche complete autonomy over where our first bunch of funding went in the tech business, right, in GetLion. But you don't know. Well, we've got to reserve all of this money for marketing, right? And we've got to try these campaigns because how else do we get out into the world? And then it turns out, actually, in hindsight, if you had an audience that loved what you built, was willing to pay what you built, which shows you they love what you built, they become your chief evangelists, and I would have saved hundreds of grands on marketing campaigns that were ultimately wasteful. So, but how the heck no one else can be like, this is why I really do value mentorship and advisors early. But to the point, we think we know better. We think we're going to, we'll rather learn the lesson for ourselves than ask the question. So tough, expensive lessons.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you then move into dealbase.africa?
Yeah, good question. So the one thing I haven't mentioned on the podcast yet is I have just such an interest in venture capital as a catalyst for good. The venture capital ecosystem in this country really is 15 years old. It's incredibly young.
Okay.
So it's hard for anyone to judge it too harshly. Most funds are still yet to see even a first cycle. Very few investors have returned money to their shareholders. So it's early. But having had some financial services experience, I was really adamant I wanted to get into VC at some point and back great founders through capital. I didn't have the capital personally to do that. Yeah. You can't just raise a fund if you don't have credibility. So what does that journey look like? I'm not on any social media except for LinkedIn.
Okay.
And why I can vouch for LinkedIn is because when I was running the GetLion business, I obviously was trying to keep well aware of who was investing in tech products across Africa. And so I had, like most founders do, these lists of investors, right?
Yeah.
And I had pitched many of them. We were just way too early. We built great product. We were pre-revenue. We couldn't raise capital, but I'd met a lot of them as a founder and maintains most of those relationships even to this day. I started every single week on LinkedIn when I was in this kind of 3-month figuring it out season, writing an update, which now seems very common, but no one else was doing it in 21, 22. Just this little fundraising update, this roundup on LinkedIn about which tech companies around Africa were raising capital and from where. And it was ridiculous. I don't think I've got a particularly large following, but it grew quite substantially in a short space of time. You got invited to speak on fundraising at a few conferences and summits. And then I realized, well, actually, the space is not well mapped. People don't know who the right investors are. They get these lists. They're not even sure if those investors still have money in their funds. They don't understand their mandates. It's a really, really, just probably the best technical CTO I've ever met. Yeah. He and I decided, just as a pure side hustle, we will try and build a platform that is a super easy to use tool to see what activity is going around in the early stage investing space across Africa. Even to this day, there's a couple of reports that come out once a quarter and a couple of spreadsheets flying around, but nothing you can really use. Data's only as good as you can use it. Yeah. And so that was what Dealbase, which any tech founder will know, Crunchbase, which is kind of the global platform, comparable platform. We were going to build one for Africa called Dealbase, and did. and it was cool but hard to monetize. And so it was always going to only be a side hustle. That's technically still around, and we've iterated that product, and we'll in the next month launch a new rendition of that. But that's one of those, put it out into the world and see where it goes, and hopefully it gets you into some interesting rooms projects. Whether that makes money, time will tell.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll be waiting for that. Right,
yeah.
for
Thank
sure.
you, thank you, guys. You're kind. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So okay, interesting. So now you're doing deal base. You're around a lot of. I mean, now you're in the startup ecosystem. Now you're a player.
Yes.
You're not just observing from the sidelines. You're right in it.
Yeah,
right?
trying.
What are some of the common traits of successful founders and investors that you've observed?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think before we get there, I'll just segue. At the same time I was building Dealbase, it's actually where I met you guys. I had done loads of traveling to try and meet a lot of these investors. There is this notion in South Africa that if you want to be in the tech scene, you've got to move to Cape Town. It's where all the talent, the capital, the players are. I just knew way too many people in Johannesburg trying to either break into the space or playing really key roles that I was like, no. And I am the type of guy that if I see a gap, I'm like, I'm just going to do something about it. And if people want to come along for the ride, let's do it. I founded something then called the Joburg Startup Club, which was literally me cold LinkedIn in mailing 200 people. Hey guys, I think you like me, wish there was a bit more ecosystem community in Josie. Will you come along to this meet? I cold emailed a couple of investors that I'd previously pitched and some founders who I'd met, and at my own expense just paid for a night. Just said, hey, let's host. And turns out 120 of them pitched up. The investors all said yes. We hosted at a great venue in Josie. And that kicked off this thing to say, well, man, there might be something here. I'm not sure what that is, but there's clearly appetite outside of Cape Town. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
We proceeded to do another 2 of those in Joburg. And then I began to realize that not only was the appetite there, but that these people who I was, in many respects, serving through this vehicle, through these events, these were the people that I wanted to enable. These were the founders. These were the investors. I wanted to get into venture capital. I knew I was going to build another tech product. But hey, maybe there is something here if I just build audience. I focus on network, I focus on community. I add so much value to these people by connecting them, by figuring out what their biggest problems were. How do I serve them better? Let's kind of see where that goes. You begin to realize that not only is that the case in Josie, it's the case everywhere in this country. It's the case across this continent. Ecosystem building is incredibly hard, super, super hard. You guys will be trying to do it. It's incredibly difficult. But even in Cape Town, the Cape ecosystem is so fragmented, so many parties that don't collaborate, or so many parties that are isolated to their part of Cape Town, that actually they need some sort of voice, organization, collective to bring them all together. And we launched our first event in Cape Town a few months later. We began to realize, goodness me, the appetite is as high there as it is in Josie. We started getting calls to go to Durbs and to Port Elizabeth and to the northwest of places. You begin to realize, heck, we actually have these unbelievable stakeholders spread across the country. Well, maybe there's something meritorious in building this nationwide network, and the commercial side will come. It'll become clear. And we're grateful now. It's only been 18 months, but the community is close on 3,500 people. We'll hit 2,000 organizations there, about 1,400 startups in the community, probably in the next 2 months. And we then have all these other things that I'd hoped one day I'd get into, venture capital and building another tech product. All of them are happening simultaneously now because you have this audience that you have served, continue to serve, and God willing are trusting the things you're doing. It's a lesson I wish, oh my goodness, I wish I'd learned in previous ventures before I built a product, or, heck, if you have an audience that is really... that really wants to be a part of what you're doing, you can spin out things to serve them well, and it can be commercially viable.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I've seen this business model a lot these days with guys like Iman Gaji, Andrew Tate. I know these names probably have
Sure.
They trigger certain insecurities and
Yes,
stuff in different people.
Yeah, not
But
in me. I'm sure. I'm
yeah,
fine.
okay,
Yeah.
great.
But in some people, yes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What these guys have done so successfully that I wish to also aspire to is to build a really great audience, build a really great following, give as much free value as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Then when you do launch something, you already have an audience that's waiting for you.
Absolutely. And you understand them. I think that's important. You really understand the pain points, because as much as we all want to build commercial entities, goodness me, the mistake I see made way too often is just the price point. The entry into that commercial endeavor is just so wrong, because they've prematurely decided to go, well, flip, I've got a following, I've got an audience. It's never been easier to build an audience, right? In the world of social media and fake following and all these things. The one word of wisdom I would give to anybody is that the only way that Startup Club has grown the way that it has is building in-person audience. You cannot discount the value of I meet you every couple of months and we build a relationship. That builds a stickiness. There is a lifetime value to that audience that is just pretty remarkable. And when it gets down to it, even though I've got a big social media following or I don't, deals are done between people. They're done between individuals. And if you want to build a commercial entity that makes money, you're gonna do deals that way. It's not going to be through my thousands of followers or just through a virtual audience. It's going to be. So that's why we've been adamant to do this stuff in person, even though it is the most expensive side to what I do, and just do it with a regular cadence.
Yeah. Yep, I can definitely relate to a lot of things. There's nothing more powerful than a handshake, and you look someone in the eye and you build relationship that way.
Absolutely. And in many respects make the circle bigger, man. Like our community is, the tech space, although I had nothing to do with it, the tech space has been white men only for decades.
And you always say that every time you go on stage.
And I say to and that just is not, I mean, there is no reason that should still be the case. There's no reason that is going to be the case. Our community is largely underrepresented people, and that is by design. But again, how do you break some of those cultural norms unless you are in person and just convening, just connecting with one another, just building community first?
I'll ask you a very could be sensitive question.
Go.
I've seen, especially in Cape Town, that if you attend startup events and you attend conferences and things like this, you will see that it's very white dominated, right? Which is not a representation of the country. So when you say it's like that by design, what exactly do you mean?
Well, as in, we by design work very hard to ensure that our events are inclusive and diversely represented.
Okay.
Right? So even for the first event I hosted in Joburg, when I said to you that I cold messaged people over LinkedIn, it wasn't just because they were tech founders. It was overwhelmingly people of color. Yeah. So that's intentional. We assume this is just going to happen, but no, it takes effort. It takes I want you there. Don't say no. I understand cancel culture is a thing. Don't say no. Join us. Be a part of this thing. There's some sobriety around demographics in certain cities, right? Cape Town, especially in the tech space, is overwhelmingly white. It just is what it is. It's overwhelmingly male. Even at our events, we do, despite that intentionality, it's much harder down there than it is in Joburg to get as diverse an audience. Although I think we still do really well. Really, contextually speaking. I haven't looked at the last few event numbers, but again, it's only going to change if we're intentional, right? And so that's our goal. Everyone is invited to the Startup Club party.
Very inspirational.
Trying, man. Trying. It is what it is.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Okay, and then for founders that are in the middle of raising capital, what are some of the tips that you can give them to get their round as quickly as possible?
Ooh, the elusive question. Again, I can speak largely to tech founders, because obviously non-tech founders, there are other mechanisms you can unlock. Firstly, some quick advice. Number one, are you ready to actually take capital on? Because I don't think founders appreciate what that means for their business.
Okay.
Happy to explain that.
Mm-hmm.
People just think, I actually just want money to build the things I want to build. That is a really, to be frank, it is an immature response, because it just means you haven't walked the business building journey yet. What you need to understand is when you take capital, you raise investment, you become accountable to generate shareholder value. That is the business.
Okay.
It is not about autonomy to build what I want to build. It is not about, I hope these guys back my vision and get out of my way. It is none of that. So you need to know, what the heck am I asking for if I'm taking on someone's investment? That's probably the first thing. The second thing is this idea around stewardship. People do not realize that they have to be responsible stewards of money that they take on. Africa right now is fighting a narrative. That narrative for anyone raising capital is Africa is risky.
Mm-hmm.
Africa is fraudulent. I'm not going to get my money back. I can't trust these people. That is unfortunately the global investors' narrative that thinks that Africa is just one big country, firstly, and that South Africa happens to be at the bottom.
Yeah.
So we are fighting. If we want more capital into the continent, and especially from stakeholders on continent to invest, we have to rebuild that narrative, which means we are going to be the most faithful stewards of capital that's given to us. You can trust us. We're going to be transparent. We're going to spend money wisely. We're going to ask for advice when we don't know what we're doing. These are all the things, and it's so much of the reason why the work we do at Startup Club is as much about community building as it is about enhancing the story and building this brand. I have this vision that South Africa by 2035 is a true startup nation. It is a country that folks are going, these breed innovators, they breed technical talent, they've got this huge appetite from investors, and they've got a market that can actually create liquidity for those investors as well. So you can sell your companies, sell your stakes, etc. That's a startup nation. Israel, Singapore, and it can happen within a decade or two. It's very possible. There's precedent globally. The question you've asked around raising capital. So firstly, do you actually, in context of all of that, do you want to raise capital? Because I don't think founders know. Part of the biggest thing is just the pressure. The pressure that comes with sending investor reports and knowing that half of those are not going to be good. Actually, guys, we didn't hit our numbers this month. Actually, guys, we need more finance. Can you bridge us? Being comfortable with debt versus equity structures and knowing in this market soberly that you're owed nothing.
Yeah.
The world owes you even if your idea is the best and you're the most passionate about this thing, you are owed nothing. But probably one of the hardest things, so I'll talk to you about our fund. We know there is an investment gap in this country.
Yeah.
Fact. Part of what makes the startup fund so unique is that we meet founders through our work, probably a higher cadence than almost any other VC. So we know we will be the moment I say, oh, by the way, we also invest in founders, we know we've got a unique access to potential deal flow. What I need to see from a founder super early on is that this person in their life has had at least one instance of creating value with the resources they've had in their hands. How have they created value? Because that's all I have to be accountable to my shareholders, right, in the fund. Yeah. You've got to be accountable to me. If I can't look at you and see this person is going to create 10 times more value than the value I'm giving them, then you're not investable. And most founders fail to be able to prove that point. They go, well, I built this MVP, and what are you talking about? The market in this sector is humongous, and this has worked in the US, so it's going to work here. All possibly very true, but can I back you? Can I back you? And most funds will know that, or most investors will know that what you've presented me today is going to look 180 degrees different in 12 months. So it matters so much the person. Can I look at Larreth and say, Fluff, if I give Larreth $1 million, it's going to become $2 million. I don't even know how. I've got no idea how. But do I think he's going to put his blood, sweat, and tears into generating return? Possibly. So most first-time founders that I meet, I've got no idea firstly, they don't comprehend that, and secondly, they've got no idea how to articulate that effectively to investors.
So communication is also a big part.
So clear, and it can't just be a standard pitch deck. To the pineapple reference I made to you earlier, if I'm getting 1,000 folks asking me for cash, the guy who actually rocks up to my office and does something unique and forces my attention to go on to him, that's already a sign of me going, well, this guy's going to do something different to generate interest, attention, value, equity, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Something there. So there is no template. That's my long answer to it. There is no template for raising capital, but it is relationships that will get that over the line. And if you are not investing into the connections, you cannot expect to be sending out, I see this post so many times on LinkedIn. I messaged 300 investors and not one of them had the decency to come back to me. If you really understood how much goes into vetting deals for an investor, if you really understood their mandate, my goodness, you'd have a little bit of sympathy for them. Investors, turns out, don't make that much money, by the way. VC is super hard to make money in, super hard, way harder in Africa. That's why most venture capital funds start at $30 million upwards. Sounds like a huge fund, right? Super hard to return their capital. And the way the traditional VCs are set up structurally is I can only take a very small portion of that to pay the salaries of the people in the fund. So you've got 3 to 5 people doing 20 people's jobs. It is not as glamorous. It's super cool when they sit on the other side of the pitch session and they're judging you from afar and you're like, these people are amazing. But trust me, as we get closer to launching our fund, we probably couldn't launch a fund unless we ran it commercially alongside our other endeavors.
Wow.
And that's what a lot of founders need to know. They've got to understand the investor's business, their mandate, what makes them tick, and can I prove I'm going to be a key asset to this investor?
Wow.
That is a long answer to a very short question, but as you can hear, I get asked this a lot, so I try and give you some context there.
No, it's filled with a lot of value because as a founder myself, I do. Well, we went for an accelerator, and then we thought, great, we're pitching really well.
Sure.
But where are the investors? Why are they not coming? And then we failed to realize that investors are different. Some only invest in certain industries and verticals. And B, there's a lot more that comes into someone giving you money than, I like you and you guys are great.
In fact, that I like you is the most misleading metric, right? Because I do not, I do not want to invest in a charismatic founder. I want to invest in a founder that can deliver.
Yeah.
I think I'm a charismatic guy. I want people to know I can deliver. They should be able to look at Startup Club and say, oh gosh, you did all of that with just that? That's like someone I would want to back. And that's the narrative we have to raise our fund off of, right? I'm also about to fundraise again for a fund. It's not for a business, but it's the exact same conversation.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So we're about to close now.
Sure.
We've really, really went through your journey, and personally, I've learned a lot. I just want to. There's something that you mentioned at the beginning that you are strong in your faith.
Sure.
You believe you are a pastor's kid, and now you've grown up. You still believe. What are some of the most important things that you have learned from the Lord Jesus Christ himself that you apply in business?
Oh man, you'll hear me talk about stewardship a lot. I think I've mentioned that a few times. I believe that we have been given, well, firstly, I think that anything that we decide to do with our time, if it honors the Lord, he will resource. It means that I focus way, way less on what I want and what is going to make me happy than actually pleasing him, serving people, adding value in the world, solving problems. It's fundamental. It's literally the backbone of why I do what I do. It's the foundation on which my marriage stands, why my wife runs her business. We believe we're here to bring people together, to solve big problems, to serve people. And if people really knew how very useless I am, and how there is such a gap between my capability and resources and what we've been able to do in a very short career, what I've been able to do in a very short career, I don't know how. You'd probably not necessarily. I mean, there is faith there, right?
Yeah.
I cannot understate how I'm figuring it out, and yet there has been favor I can't account for. Yeah, man. But business is between people, and people are the greatest asset in the world. And so I think if we care and serve people, there's something fundamental there, and that's what the Bible teaches.
Yeah.
So yeah, but literally, this is not about me. That's what I will say.
It's not about you.
In summary, it's not about me. This is, ultimately, may my life be a good testimony of God's goodness.
Right. I mean, there was that one time in the garden before Jesus was about to be handed over to be trialed and crucified, and this is the Savior of the world. And in that one moment, he prayed and he said, "Lord, please let this cup pass, please. But if it is your will, Lord, let it be done." And in that moment, Jesus showed that as much as he is God in flesh, right? He's there and he's saying, this is a really, really tough thing. I can't handle this, please. But if that's your will, let it be done. And he showed the most amazing sign of, this is not about me, it's about everyone else.
Well, that's it, man.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing I would close on is, I actually meet a lot of an overwhelming majority of the founders I happen to interview end up being similar faith people, Christian believers. Not everyone listening to the podcast today will share our faith necessarily, but there is something fundamental about wanting to build something in service of the world around us, with our eyes focused on the Lord.
Yeah.
Something about that. And I don't know what it is, but, well, I guess I do know what that is. I mean, that's what this is all about, right?
Yeah.
Eternity versus now, man. And may my small efforts be reflected in whatever the Lord wants to do with them, in an eternity. So big, profound close.
Yeah.
So, and if anything, I think if you're listening to the podcast today and you don't necessarily share those sentiments, let's talk, because, yeah, I think we could encourage you in what all of this is about. The one thing I realized in the financial services space is that I was dealing with people that were materially richer than anyone I'd ever met, and yet spiritually poorer and purposefully poorer than anyone. Okay, I couldn't get my mind around. I couldn't reconcile that difference. So what matters to people is not the thing that actually matters. Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
That money, it's not.
Hey man, listen, God willing, we make some money as well, but it is but a resource to do the next thing with. You know what I mean? I've got 80, 90 years to try and smash whatever opportunity I've got out of the ballpark, and that's what we'll try and do,
Will we ever see a Pastor Mathew Marsden?
Hey, brother, I don't know. I don't know that I'm called to full-time ministry. I think there's work to be done. But I was having this conversation with friends recently. I think we're all in ministry. I just don't happen to work at a church. Yeah. Okay. Convo for another day.
For another day.
Yeah.
Awesome. So 2 last quick things.
Please.
The guest. So we do this thing at the end where we ask you a question from the previous guest.
Cool.
So his question to you was, if you have 24 hours left to live, and that's all you had, what is the one thing that you would have to do at all costs?
24 hours left to live. And I knew.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew.
Yep.
I would have conversations with people about Jesus Christ that I have held off on for way too long. That is what I would do. Yeah.
Brilliant.
If I knew I only had 24 hours, oh my goodness. And that's the stuff we should be doing now. But in the context of life and death, man, is there anything else that matters? I'm not sure.
Nope, nothing. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then, do you have a question that you would like to give to the next guest, and what would be that question?
Oh, no. Geez, I don't know. I think you can steal the question I ask all of our founders, and that is, What does success look like at the end of all of this? What does success look like at the end of all of this? Yeah, and it's interesting that it's very rarely material, even for folks that have all of it.
Thank you so much.
An absolute pleasure.
Cool stuff. So as we close, we like to do this thing where we give you a gift.
That's awesome.
When we were shopping for this gift, we thought Mathew has probably read all these books.
I actually have not read Diary of a CEO of all things. So I'm grateful. It is not wasted on me. I can assure you. That's awesome. Thank you, guys.
It adds some value to your life.
That's cool. That's cool. If you start hearing me sound a lot smarter than I am, it's because I've been reading a new book.
Awesome.
Thank you for this opportunity, team. I appreciate it. And
thank you.
Yeah, big fans of what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone that's been listening, thank you so much. And always remember, the truth will set you free. Cheers.